Hello, Glenn.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to our hearing.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everyone. For those of you joining, just to let you know, we have hit record, so we're recording the hearing. And we're going to just give ourselves a couple of minutes to allow those who are still logging on to do so. For those of you that are joining us to testify today, if you could please put your name and affiliation in the chat box. We will use that to call you up for testimony. And if you're calling in today, my name's Dave Pringle. Please unmute yourself now by using *6, and you can just let us know verbally your name and affiliation, and if you'd like to testify. Thanks again for those joining. If you just logged in, if you're here to testify today, if you could please put your name and if you're representing an organization into the chat, we'll get you in line to provide public testimony. If you've called in, please unmute yourself now by using *6. You can give your name and we can put you on the list for testimony as well. We'll give ourselves just a few more minutes for people to log in and sign up. And then I'll go through the opening remarks before we take testimony. And Stephen or Austin, just let me know if you see more people waiting in the lobby or anything like that, or if you think we've got everybody.
Hey, Dave, I've turned off the waiting room, so people should just be logging in.
Okay, great, thanks. So far, I see 3 names of folks wishing to testify. We'll just give ourselves another 2 minutes to see if there's anybody else who wishes to testify this afternoon. I see Lauren, your hand up. Are you wishing to put your name on the list to testify?
Yes, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for anybody just joining us, if you could just put your name in the chat if you'd like to testify. I don't see any more phone numbers, but if anybody is on the phone, you can unmute yourself *6 to let me know you'd like to testify as well. I'm going to give ourselves just another minute. Oh, okay, thanks, Terry. All right, I'm gonna just say again, if you'd like to testify, please put your name in the chat. And with that, I think we're gonna get going. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a public hearing on proposed additions to Washington Administrative Code, Chapter 194-40. I'm Dave Pringle, Legislative and Rules Coordinator at the Department of Commerce, and I'm the presiding officer for this virtual-only hearing today. This hearing is being recorded to comply with the requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act. The statement of inquiry for the proposed rules being considered today was filed as WSR 19-14-050, and the proposed rules were filed as WSR 22-07-104. The proposed rules ensure proper implementation and enforcement of the Clean Energy Transformation Act, or CETA, and addresses wholesale market transactions and the prohibition on double counting as provided for in RCW 19.405.100 and RCW 19.405.130. The proposed rules apply to municipal utilities, public utility districts, and rural, cooperative, or mutual utilities. The proposed rules clarify that utilities can clean electricity sources in an amount equal to 100% of the utility's retail electric load beginning January 1st, 2030, and supply 100% of all sales of electricity to Washington retail electric customers using electricity from renewable or non-emitting sources beginning January 1st, 2045. The proposed rules establish specification, verification, and reporting requirements for wholesale market purchases and address the prohibition of double counting of non-power attributes under RCW 19.405.040. The proposed rules also provide clarification on the treatment of storage resources under the requirement in Chapter 19.405 of RCW. The Department of Commerce worked closely with the Utilities and Transportation Commission in interpreting CETA through rules. Information on the UTC process is available on its rulemaking website under docket 210183. So again, thanks all for joining us. If you wish to testify today, please put your name and affiliation in the chat box. If there's anyone on the phone and you're unable to use the chat box, please unmute yourself now by using *6 and let us know your name and affiliation. I'm going to take a moment to just make sure we capture anybody who wishes to testify. All right, we have a few people who have signed up. Just as a reminder, we're also accepting written comments on this rulemaking process. The deadline for written comments on the proposed rules is 5 p.m. today. Those comments can be submitted to ceta@commerce.wa.gov. We'll continue the hearing until everyone who is signed in has had an opportunity to testify. Are there any questions about process before we start? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. When I call your name, please start by stating your name and your affiliation as you begin your testimony. I would like to start with Nicole Hughes, please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Hughes, and I'm here today on behalf of the Public Generating Pool, a trade association that represents 10 Washington consumer-owned utilities that own and operate generating resources in the state. PGP appreciates the opportunity to comment on these proposed rules implementing the Clean Energy Transformation Act. PGP generally supports the approach in these proposed rules in regards to the use of electricity and renewable energy credits to comply with CETA's 2030 greenhouse gas neutral standard. PGP continues to have concerns that requiring a prospective hourly analysis is not consistent with CETA's retrospective multi-year compliance framework. However, compared to the previous draft of this rule, PGP interprets the rule language before us today as appropriately providing flexibility to consumer-owned utilities with respect to updating their hourly analyses as load, resource, and other relevant inputs evolve over time. Furthermore, PGP anticipates that a utility could identify use of a potential standardized clean wholesale market product in its resource portfolio under the proposed rules. PGP continues to believe that the articulation of a use standard for 2045 is premature. The two pathways for use articulated in the proposed rule are both unrealistic and are likely prohibitive for Washington utilities to continue participating in regional wholesale energy markets. Markets are expected to evolve in ways that this rule does not and cannot currently anticipate over the next decade. The experiences of utilities in implementing the use rule established for the 2030 standard will necessarily inform the practical steps to achieving CETA's 2045 100% clean energy standard. Lastly, PGP will again be providing written comments to Commerce that include suggested amendments to the proposed rules for establishing safeguards to prevent double counting of unbundled recs. We believe that the proposed rule as written would restrict utilities' ability to buy and sell standard products in both the wholesale energy and rec markets. And I guess since I have the luxury of being one of two people signing up to testify, I will add that PGP also supports the storage accounting proposed rule as written. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. Next up, we will have Stacy Leclerc.
No, I think Stacy said she was not testifying.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. Sorry, I missed that. Let's see. Oh, Katie Ware.
Thanks, Dave. Katie Ware with Renewable Northwest. So we at Renewable Northwest have been engaged throughout Commerce's rulemaking process, and we first want to thank the department for their work implementing CETA. We're optimistic that the state agencies have landed on an interpretation of use that will lead Washington electric utilities to decarbonize their system in accordance with CETA's mandates. We will be submitting written comments this afternoon with a handful of minor recommendations, but I'll just briefly mention a couple of them here. So we first recommend that the department adopt the Commission's definition of retained non-power attribute to avoid the requirement that utilities acquire the REC and the associated electricity in a, quote, single transaction, which we see as ambiguous. I know other people have commented something to that effect as well. We go into greater detail in the comments, specifically around similar language in the Commission's rules that we think the two side by side creates a sort of a confusing CETA compliance framework across the state agencies. Further, we think a utility's use of this retained non-power attribute or RECs other than unbundled RECs for primary compliance should be more limited to ensure the utility has the operational flexibility they need to conduct real-time transactions to balance their system, but limit it to that. And we make a recommendation to that effect in our comments. Finally, we think the department may benefit from a rule reopening prior to 2030 to consider potential new tools to ease compliance reporting and review whether these draft rules create a compliance framework that actually does set utilities on a trajectory to meeting the firm 2045 mandate, and then the implementation of Washington's Climate Commitment Act. We also appreciate the clear direction in the 2045 rules that create more of a firm requirement with compliance with 050 sub 1, less flexibly than 040 sub 1. Specifically, the department notes the utility may not use the associated electricity with an acquired REC for any other purpose than supplying electricity to its Washington electric customers, and we appreciate that. Again, we'll be submitting written comments this afternoon with more detail on these recommendations. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Katie. Next, we have Lauren McCloy.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, this is Lauren McCloy, Policy Director with Northwest Energy Coalition. Again, I want to thank the Department of Commerce for the opportunity to comment today on the final proposed CETA rules. We appreciate the work that Commerce staff especially has done to facilitate this process over the last 2 years. And I want to start by echoing the comments of Renewable Northwest regarding Commerce's implementation of RCW 19-405050, the 100% clean standard. However, ultimately, we are disappointed with the rules interpretation of the 2030 standard RCW 19405.040 as stated in our previous comments. We continue to believe that this section of law requires utilities' actual electricity operations to be carbon neutral, with 80% of those megawatt hours met with clean and non-emitting resources. And this is necessarily different than a REC-based standard or planning standard, and we don't think that this section of the rule gets that quite right. That's important because we think that in order for this to be implemented as intended, it needs to provide a strong regulatory push for early action and supporting integration of things like customer side resources, flexible load, energy storage. It's going to be important now for utilities to ultimately meet that 2045 standard. So that being said, we note that the rules requirements represent a compliance floor and not a ceiling. And we're hopeful that as utilities start to actually implement the law, they'll start to see the value in making these investments now that will set the stage for transitioning to 100% clean electricity grid in the future. And we hope that through a combination of planning, stakeholder engagement, and market transformation that utilities will do this. We look forward to continuing to work with utilities and commerce to ensure that the transformation is equitable and provides benefits to vulnerable populations and communities and customers generally. And then finally, I want to express appreciation for the notion of a clean electricity market as Commerce proposes in WAC 194.40.415. As several other commenters have noted, markets will continue to evolve, and we do think that the markets that we have now are not necessarily the markets that we're going to have in the future. So as much as we can do to try to push those markets to be clean, we think that that's the right way to go for the state and for the region. So we hope that the state will continue to push for transparent markets that are designed to meet Washington's public policy goals, including CETA. So thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, those are the only commenters that have indicated to me right now. So I'd just like to open the floor up again. If you'd like to testify, please put your name in the chat. And if you're on the phone and would like to testify, please unmute yourself by pressing *6 and stating your intention to testify. All right, seeing no takers. Oh, Glenn?
If it seems like there was no other testimony, so I thought I might just take a moment and express appreciation on behalf of the Department of Commerce for the work that's gone on over the last 3 years to complete this rulemaking. We're not quite done. We are going to look forward to those written comments today, and then we'll need to figure out resolution of all those. But this is our last hearing or workshop or anything like that that's currently scheduled. So it's involved a lot of hours, a lot of people, and we've really appreciated the engagement that so many different stakeholders invested in this. It's definitely made for a better process on a very complicated and important topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, we certainly appreciate everyone's participation. Okay, seeing no other testimony for our official hearing, I'm going to close the hearing and thank you all for attending. And as Glenn mentioned, please remember to submit written comments today by 5 p.m. to the email ceta@commerce.wa.gov. Staff will consider these written comments as well as those heard here today when making final edits to the proposed rules. So there's still some work to be done. We'll provide an explanatory statement for proposed edits that we choose not to adopt. We intend to file final rules before July 1st, 2022, in coordination with the Utilities and Transportation Commission, and then the rules will become effective 30 days after that filing. We'll notify interested folks about those filings as well. If you want to participate in the Utility and Transportation Commission's public hearing on their version of these rules, again, go to their rulemaking page and see docket 210183 on their webpage for more meeting information. And if you'd like to stay up to date and track implementation of these rules and CETA more broadly, we ask you subscribe to our bulletin. You can reach that on our webpage, commerce.wa.gov/CETA. Let's see. Oh, and Glenn, we do have a CETA event, a webinar on the Clean Energy Implementation Plan submitted by public utility districts, municipal electric utilities, and cooperatives. The webinar will be on May 6th at 2 p.m. You can find meeting information on our CETA website and compliance webpage. Let's see, I think that can be found at the CETA page, and then as well as commerce.wa.gov/growing the economy/energy/compliance and reporting. Thank you all for your participation throughout this rulemaking, and we are adjourned. Stay safe and healthy.